Welcome to our Sunday school class. We're doing our final lesson of this class, a basic Bible study. And I struggled a bit with the title. I ended up calling it The Images of Revelation. It's lesson 13. Pat Smith is a freelance commercial illustrator and designer. She has done artwork professionally all of her adult life. She has done various types of artwork for publishers, businesses, agencies, and ministries in the United States and Canada. After rededicating her life and talents to the Lord in 1980, Pat was led to and accepted a challenge that very few artists have accepted. She illustrated the book of Revelation from beginning to end. This project was not commissioned by a publisher, but was done out of necessity and a desire to help a group of teenage Sunday school students better understand the message in Revelation by seeing the visions described there. In preparation for teaching the class, Pat searched bookstores and libraries in vain for visual materials to supplement her teaching. The book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, was given in the form of fantastic visual images. The artist felt that it needed to be taught in the same way in which the Lord gave it to the Apostle John, visually. She came to the realization that if she wanted visual teaching materials, she would have to illustrate the visions herself. She also realized that the only way she could do such a difficult task was with God's guidance. It took constant prayer, extensive research, and thousands of hours of hard work. There were many times when she felt as if the power of the Holy Spirit was flowing through her and out the tip of her brush. Her artistic portrayal in watercolors and airbrush acrylics captured every detail of the scriptures within 40 full-color illustrations. A few years back, I purchased a CD with Pat Smith's illustrations of Revelation on it. There were 40 illustrations that she did. And what she basically did was took the book of Revelation, opened up the passages, and read them, and literally tried to illustrate what the text was saying. And I found it fascinating. As you look at the detail of those, and we'll show you some of those illustrations today, you'll see that it's exactly the way she imagined that John saw the visions. I did a reading of those illustrations, and I actually, the ladies' Sunday school class here a few Sundays ago used it in their class. And so you can go view that reading if you want to on my website, speakthegoodword.com. It's under the same page as this basic Bible study class. Listen as I do the reading for this picture that you're seeing now on the screen. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the four beasts say, "Come and see." Fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. That's a reading from Revelation 6, verses 1 to 8. Okay, an introduction then. Coming to Revelation, from the rest of the New Testament is like entering a foreign country, literally. When you get through the book of Jude and you start reading the book of Revelation, it's like getting into a foreign country. Come in, welcome. Most of the problems stem from the symbols that John saw. And this is why using imagery to teach the class on Revelation or Introduction to Revelation is so helpful because of the dramatic images that are there. There's some of them that are identified. Okay, some of the images are identified. They're the Lamb, the Holy City, and so on. But many of them are just weird and fantastic. And it's not only that you can't visualize the image of the beast, but it's the combination of things that are happening. He's got 10 heads, and he's got 7 horns. How in the world do you visualize all of this, okay? It's really, really weird. And I'll just tell you up front, I had some people that will tell you they really know the book of Revelation. And they'll tell you, that's what this means, okay? For instance, there are scorpions that are talked about in the book of Revelation, and they've got tails, okay? And they've got stings in their tails. And they make the sound of horses running to battle. That's what they sound like, okay? And I had somebody tell me that, I know what those are. Those are helicopters. Right. We don't know, okay? We don't know what they are, okay? The exegesis and interpretation of Revelation require a lot of humility. And this is what I would urge you. When you look at the book of Revelation, humility is what you need to adopt. You need to be very humble about your opinion because you're probably not right, okay? You're probably way off base. And I've actually looked at the book of Revelation and I'm like, I'm going to teach through the book of Revelation. I look at it and I look at it and then I back away. Because I don't know what it means. A lot of times I frankly don't know what it means. And so you need to have a lot of humility as you start looking at the book of Revelation. There is a blessing associated with it. Verse 3 says, "Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear and who keep what is written in it, for the time is near." So there is a certain blessing that's there in studying the book of Revelation. And hopefully, after today's class, we'll be able to get some new insight on what's the best way to read the book of Revelation and to study it. Okay, the nature of Revelation. The type of literature is called apocalypse. We've been looking at a lot of different types of literature in the Bible, and this is the last one we're going to look at because today is the last class. But it's called apocalypse. To begin exegesis of the book, we need to decide what type of literature it is, and it's called apocalypse, and it's a literary form that does not exist in our day. The book is actually a mixture of 3 literature types. It is apocalypse, the majority of it, but there is also some prophecy that's in there. And there is also the epistle portion of it, if you will. The first 3 chapters are more like an epistle or a letter that John is writing. Okay, first then, Revelation as apocalypse. The taproot of apocalyptic is the Old Testament prophetic literature. That's where it comes from. That's the style of where apocalyptic literature began. Back in the Old Testament, insert some of the prophetic books that you'll read. You'll see as you go back into Ezekiel and Daniel, you'll start saying, wait, this sounds just a lot like Revelation. And it is. They are written the same way. They're using this literary form called apocalyptic. Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, and parts of Isaiah use the apocalyptic type of writing. And it's important that we understand what this literature form is all about, or partially understand it. For instance, Ezekiel, and if you read through his book, he describes sitting by the river Kedar, and he's in a vision. He's deeply in a vision. And if I didn't believe that Ezekiel was a godly man, and if I was a cynic today, I would say he was stoned. Okay, he was high. Okay, because he sat there and he described these weird things that he saw in his vision. Okay, he saw these wheels going through the sky. Wheel, and inside of one wheel was another wheel. And as the wheels moved sideways, they would go this way. And then they would all go together this way. And they would move this way. And they would do this kind of thing. And this artist is trying to capture this on the slide here. And the old-time gospel singers, would sing this song. I don't know how many of you have heard the song, Ezekiel Saw a Wheel? Way in the middle of the air. Yeah, he saw a wheel. Wheel inside of a wheel. One wheel was the grace of God and the other one was something else. I can't remember how they interpreted it. But this is apocalyptic. This is what apocalyptic is. It's visions where these people see these fantastic things. Apocalyptic was born in times of persecution. That's almost universal, that the apocalyptic literature was written during times of persecution. The stuff of apocalyptic is presented in the forms of visions and dreams, and most of the apocalyptics are formally stylized. They use a certain type of style that they're using. And why was it spawned during persecution? There's probably different theories out there, but part of it may be that they didn't want to specifically name the authorities that were in power at that point, and so get wrath on themselves for writing about them. But it was cryptic, it was symbolic, it was stuff of fantasy. And we'll look at a few of those pictures there, or the artist's conception of what they were like. Okay, Revelation as prophecy and epistle. There are portions of Revelation that are prophecy and epistle as well. Welcome. Grab a hand out there. The sense of prophecy is that the events are imminent. And this is one thing that is confusing to us. It's confusing to me today, is that the writing is that John is writing that this stuff is just going to happen here very quickly. And so, when did it happen? When was it going to happen? Okay, different people would look at it differently. How imminent is imminent? How near is near? Okay, the end times, how soon? Things would shortly come to pass, is what the text would say. The book was not sealed for the future. It was unsealed. Most of it was. John's personal approach in writing makes the literature like an epistle. And the way he writes would sound like he was writing to a group of people that he knew, perhaps. And of course he did in the first part of the book. Okay, the necessity of exegesis. Why do you need to do careful exegesis in this book? Okay. The first task is to seek the author's original intent, and that's what exegesis, of course, is. What was the intent of the writer? Was he writing to the people of that day? Was it for us today? And so on. What was his intent? What John intended to mean? What his readers could have understood it to mean? Apocalyptic imagery is of several kinds. As you go through the book of Revelation, you'll see that the literature is several different kinds. Okay, some are standard throughout. One thing means something, the same thing throughout the book. Some are more fluid, it seems like. They seem to mean different things as you go through there. when John interprets the images, we need to use them as a baseline for further interpretation. So in other words, when he says the lamb that was slain, we know that's Jesus. Okay, that's very clear to us. The lamb that was as if he had been slain. We know that's Jesus, and we can use that throughout the Revelation. When he says the man on the horse that is going forth to conquer, we know that's God or Jesus. And so we can use that throughout. Some of the images are identified. If you look through there, you'll see in the first chapter, verses 7 to 20, there's the first vision that John actually saw. And the one like the Son of Man. I don't think there's any question but that is Jesus. Okay? And he describes him. And his hair is white like wool. He's got the 7 stars in his hand. And it identifies what those are. Those are the ministers or the angels of the 7 churches. The 7 candlesticks are the 7 churches that he was going to write to. I had a funny thing happen one time. This guy there down in Belize, and a lot of the folks down there are African American. And he said, we know that Jesus was in fact African American. I said, well, how do you know that? He said, yeah, the Bible says his hair was like wool. Okay, so we know he was African American. Okay, all righty then. He certainly wasn't white like we are. We know that. Like most of us are. He was probably like the folks in the Middle East are today. That was his nationality. But he said, yeah, his hair was like wool. So he was, but it was white like wool. We don't know exactly what it was like. Some of the other images that are identified. The great dragon. And this is a dramatic image. Chapter 12. And there is this woman who is about to give birth. And there's the dragon who is just waiting to devour her child when it's born, okay? A dramatic image. And in this image, in Revelation 12, it actually does say that this is Satan. This great dragon is Satan. So we can take that information and we say this great dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns is in fact Satan. And we'll see him use this image further on. Another image that's identified is the great harlot in chapter 17, who is drunk with the blood of the saints. Okay? And she's riding this beast. And she is, the 7 heads of the beast are identified. It says this is the city that rules over all the nations. And they're drunk with the blood of the saints. And to me, that's pretty clear. That, in fact, is Rome, okay? And that was the Catholic system that basically killed so many of our ancestors, okay? And the woman there is drunk with the blood of the saints. Very dramatic imagery that's identified in this case. Okay, moving on then, the necessity for exegesis, continuing I should say. One must see the visions as wholes and not allegorically press the details, just like parables. When we talked about parables, don't look at this vision and take every little piece and try to attach some significance to it. Look at the vision as a whole. What is he trying to say with his vision? Okay, and so in our exegesis, we need to do that. Apocalypses in general do not make chronology a priority. This is key to understanding the book of Revelation, is that chronology is not, you don't start at chapter 1 and you go through chapter 22 and it is all in order. It's not that way. It's not intended to be taken that way. It's kind of like a play. And you will see the same time frame given in different settings. Okay, you'll have the 7 trumpets, and the angels are there sounding the 7 trumpets, and there's 7 things that happen as they sound each of these trumpets, and those all happen. And then you'll see coming onto the stage, you'll see these angels with big bowls in front of them, and they pour out these bowls on the earth, and all kinds of mayhem happens when they pour out these bowls. But the seven angels that are sounding the trumpets and the 7 bowls are probably the same time period. Okay, it's just a different enactment, if you will, of what's happening or what will happen. Okay, talking a bit about the historical context. Begin with a provisional reconstruction of the situation in which it was written. Okay, what was the situation when it was written? It was John. He was exiled onto the Isle of Patmos. And God, it was a time of persecution. It was a time of the church was really under a lot of hardship. And John was writing this, I think, a lot as an encouragement to the churches. Get a feel for the book. And as you're doing historical context, it's good to just do an overview, read the whole book. It really doesn't take that long, the book of Revelation. You think it would, but it doesn't. Watch for references as to who John's audience was. That's really good. You can figure out kind of what his audience is by who would be benefited by this book. The main themes are clear throughout the book. The church and the state are on a collision course. The initial victory will go to the state. Suffering and death are in store for the church. There's an encouragement to remain faithful. The church triumphs even through death. And then in the end, God's wrath is poured out on those who caused this suffering and death. Continuing on with our historical context, one of the keys to good exegesis is recognizing the twin concepts of tribulation and wrath. Two things that are happening throughout the book of Revelation are tribulation and then there's wrath. Tribulation is suffering for the saints. And one of the big things of discussion that you will hear in circles is the 7 years of tribulation that's going to happen sometime. 3.5 years, 7 years. A lot of talk about those numbers throughout the book of Revelation. God's wrath is his judgment on those who have persecuted the church. Okay, that's the historical context. Next, looking at the literary context. The book is a creatively structured whole and unfolds like a great drama. Chapters 1 to 5 set the stage for the drama. And that's John, first of all, then there's Christ, then there's the church, and then there's the throne room scene. This is the first stage, if you will, on this large play. This is the first large drama scene, if you will. In a couple of the pictures, there's John sitting on the Isle of Patmos. He was banished there by the emperor. Strange thing about John, he never died there. Okay, they left him there, and eventually he was taken off the island. He died. He's the only one of the apostles that died a natural death that we know of. He was very old, probably 90-some years old when he died. And this is the first vision that John saw of Jesus. And it had all to do with his writings that he was going to do to the 7 churches. There's Jesus holding the 7 stars in his hand and the 7 lamps, which are the 7 churches. And the 7 churches, if you were looking at a map, would be in what is present-day Turkey and Asia Minor, if you will. And the dark shaded area there is where those 7 churches are that he was writing to. And then there's the throne room scene. This is one of the more riveting scenes in the book of Revelation, and I don't have time to spend with it this morning, but it's It's an amazing scene. There's God. There's the 7 lamps. There's the 4 beasts. There's the 24 elders that are seated around him in the throne room scene. There's just so much detail in this vision. And some of the images are actually identified as to what they are, others are not. But the 24 elders, then, as they worship God, it says that they will fall to their knees and cast their crowns before the throne. Who are the 24 elders? We don't know. They may have been the 12 apostles and 12, we don't know. Okay, the literary context continued. Chapter 6 and 7 begin the unfolding of the drama itself. The 7 seals are broken, and then you'll see what happens along with each 7 seal being broken. The 7 trumpets are sounded. There are the 7 bowls that are in fact emptied. We end the book with a tale of 2 cities, and the cities are Babylon. And that is a fascinating study. If you ever want to do a study of the Bible, look at Babylon starting way back in the Old Testament and through the end of times. Babylon is a symbol of resistance against God. And what form Babylon actually takes is very, very interesting. And then there's the heavenly Jerusalem is the other city coming down from God out of heaven. And what all that means, that's what John saw at the end. Just a few more images there. There's the lamb as it had been slain, the lion, and then Jesus, of course, which was the only one found worthy to break the seals and to open the scroll. The 7 trumpeters, the 7 angels bearing the bowls. Okay, the hermeneutical questions. We're going to have to move rapidly here because we don't have a lot of time. The words for us today are those of comfort and encouragement. And I think that is probably the most important thing for us today as we read the book of Revelation, is to get from those words that they're words of comfort and encouragement. Okay? We need to learn that the pictures of the future are just that. The pictures of the future are just that. They are pictures. The time frames are uncertain. Please don't try to put time frames exactly on there. Okay, yeah, you can, but don't be adamant about it, okay? Don't be harping on it. We know exactly when this happened. Had a Bible teacher come to our church, and he had newspaper clippings. And he had Hitler in the middle of this, and he had Mussolini, and he had all these other figures, and he said, this is this, and this is this, and this happened in 1914. You don't know. You don't know. Okay? You don't know. Yes, you don't. And the more adamant you are, the bigger you'll make a fool of yourself. God and His church are ultimately victorious. We know that. And that's what's going to happen in the end. Okay, this is a little extracurricular, but I wanted to talk with you just a little bit about the 4 different views of the book of Revelation. Okay, and the views you're hearing today are a mixture of these, okay? And you've heard of premillennialists, right? Most of you have heard of the premillennialists. All millennialists, right? And then those people who can't commit, they're the panmillennialists, okay? Whatever pans out, okay? These are views, but they are more technically 4 different views there. And I want to introduce to you just briefly what those 4 views are. And I'm not going to come down hard on any one of them. The historicist approach is the first one. The entire church age is revealed through symbolic visions. This is what the historicist approach would say, is the entire church age is revealed through symbolic visions. One day equals 1 literal year. Specific historic events are aligned with the details in Revelation. Historicist. This would be the all-millennialists would have largely a historicist view, and mixed with the spiritual view that we'll look at later. The preterist approach. This is one you may not have heard of. The preterist approach basically said that Revelation happened very soon after John wrote the book. And they would take and say that the destruction of Jerusalem, all the mayhem that you read about in the book of Revelation, actually happened during the destruction of Jerusalem. There's a big problem with this view in that it would say that the book of Revelation had to been written before 70 A.D. in order for this to work, okay? And we don't believe that happened. We believe that it was written like 90-something A.D. Okay, and that's the biggest problem with the preterist view. There's a lot of things going for the preterist view. The mayhem that happened in the destruction of Jerusalem was very, very real. And Jesus talked about that when he, in his final, toward the end of his ministry, about the terrible tribulations that are going to happen. And that happened, a lot of it, during the destruction of Jerusalem. This approach necessitates an early day of writing prior to AD 70. And that's the biggest argument against it. Many details are fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem. This view has the advantage of immediate relevancy to the original readers. And that's what it has going for it. If you guys are really into study of Revelation, I could recommend a book by Steve Gregg, is his name, Revelation, the Four Views. And this gentleman doesn't come down hard on any particular view, but it presents all four views and lets you kind of decide what you want to do with it. And I think that's kind of a nice way to teach Revelation and not be too adamant about it. Okay, Revelation, the futurist approach. This is the one that you probably are the most familiar with. The premillennial approach, or the futurist approach, okay? This view is held by the majority of contemporary evangelical teachers of today. It is the premillennialist approach. It is sensational, and that's one of the knocks against it, I think. Some of you have heard of the Tim LaHaye series, Left Behind series. Some of you maybe even watched some of his films. Tim LaHaye was very much sensationalized this view of the book of Revelation and made many dollars doing it, okay? He made so many dollars that he donated the ice rink there in Lynchburg at Liberty University, the LaHaye Center, okay? So we know he made a lot of money with it anyway. But many of the evangelical teachers would go this route. The best known version is tied into dispensational theology. And this is one reason I don't like this view, because it's tied to dispensationalism, which I believe is very wrong. Dispensationalism basically says that the Sermon on the Mount is for a future time, for instance. And I don't like that. I think it's very much for us. Revelation is divided into three sections: things past, chapter 1, things present, 2 and 3, and things future, chapter 4 to the end. This is the futurist approach. This view looks at mostly literal events in the future. And that's why this view is easier to stomach, because you don't have to be too adamant about it, because it didn't happen yet, okay? You don't have to have all the details straight, okay, because it didn't happen yet. We'll just say, well, it's going to happen in the future. So it's easier. The majority of the material, chapter 6 to 19, is thought to describe a 7-year or alternatively a 3.5-year tribulation period. They would say that most of it was happened during that either 3.5 or 7-year period. The rapture happens in chapter 4, where the church is taken from the earth, and the return of Christ in chapter 19. The millennium is portrayed in chapter 20. And so this is called a premillennial, because the millennium is thought to be in the future. Okay, just for your reference, I tend to subscribe to the premillennial view, but not a non-dispensational type, okay? I go with the historic premillennialism, not the dispensational type. And this is kind of where I would come out. And again, I'm not going to be adamant about it. We start with the Old Testament prophetic era, the church age, which is where we are now. And then the last days decline. I think the scripture teaches that very clearly. There is a decline during the last days, and we're probably in those. And then there is a great tribulation period. And my view is that, in fact, the church is still going to be here during the tribulation. I know that most of the teachers would say that the church is being raptured before the tribulation period. I don't think that scripture would teach that. The saints are resurrected. Christ returns. And these two happen very much at the same time. Christ returns. There will be a millennial kingdom, a 1,000-year reign, in which time Satan is bound and then loosed at the end. And then there will be a period of apostasy, and then the final judgment is going to happen. This is historic premillennialism and the way that it is taught. Okay, the final approach is the spiritual approach. This view does not look for specific fulfillment of the prophecies in a natural sense. Okay, this view says that the great themes are played out throughout Revelation. The triumph of good over evil, Christ over Satan, vindication of the martyrs, the sovereignty of God. This view is often mixed with others to overcome objections. Okay, and it's often mixed along with the historicist view. My late father was a minister, and he was very much a strong amillennialist. And he was so strong about it that I kind of got turned off at the book of Revelation. How many of you are kind of turned off at the book of Revelation? Any of you? Oh, thank God, you aren't. You're open-minded, okay? Do read the book of Revelation. Just don't be so adamant that you know what's going on. Okay, use it for these things, that encouragement that you can get from it. And understanding that in the end, God is going to prevail, right? And it's going to be good. The end is good. The end is good. And understand that there is going to be some tribulation and persecution for Christians. But in the end, God will prevail. That's it then, folks. Thanks for your kind attention. And I do encourage you to go to Speak the Good Word and actually view that reading that I did on the book of Revelation. It has all those images, and I read the text from Revelation, and the images are there. I think that's really neat the way that lady did those images. Thanks a lot. You may be dismissed.